Newcastle, second largest city in New South Wales, commenced planning for the royal visit nearly 12 months in advance. Weeks before the big event, buildings began to assume their gala attire. Specially planted flowers were at their best as the great day arrived. During the early morning, in intermittent regular services commenced taking up their positions along the route of the royal procession. Children were marched to special points of vantage, while hundreds of policemen from Newcastle and outlying districts and from Sydney were assembled to assist in controlling the vast anticipated crowds. People began to gather long before dawn. In typical carnival spirit, they ignored the rain. 47,000 children from as far afield as Kempsey, Inverell and Armidale flocked to Newcastle Showground in 50 special trains and hundreds of buses. The weather dampened their clothes, but not their ardor. Shortly after 1 o'clock, the royal train, drawn by two great diesel-electric locomotives, drew into Newcastle Station. Newcastle first glimpsed Her Majesty as she appeared on the rear observation platform. And the great moment arrived. Her Gracious Majesty, Elizabeth II, was here at last. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh were welcomed by Mr. Hawkins, Minister for Lands, and Mrs. Hawkins. Despite the weather, Her Majesty specifically requested an open car for her first glimpse of Newcastle. Escorted by mounted police, the royal car proceeded along Watt Street, the beachfront, and Hunter Street to the City Hall. The smiling Queen drove slowly through laneways of her wildly cheering subjects. The normal population of the city is 140,000. In this, the greatest day in Newcastle's history, a vast concourse of 350,000 people crammed the streets with just one object, to see their Queen. And they did, despite the rain. Arriving at City Hall, the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh get a real Newcastle welcome from the Lord Mayor Alderman and Mrs. Purdue. The Lord Mayor, in his robes of office, presented over 80 prominent Newcastle citizens. In her reply to the address of welcome, Her Majesty said,
"My Lord Mayor, to everyone in Newcastle and in the surrounding districts, I wish all happiness in the future. I pray that you may be able, in a peaceful world, to build and strengthen the greatness of Australia and the British Commonwealth, as you have done in the past.
The royal couple leave the City Hall on the next stage of their journey to the ex-servicemen's rally. At the sports ground, assembled bandsmen lend colour to the impressive ceremony as the Queen and Duke arrive amidst thunderous cheering. The Queen and her husband are welcomed by General Richardson. Braving the inclement weather, the Queen transfers to an open Land Rover, both to see and to be seen more easily. Thousands of ex-servicemen and women from 2 world wars and Korea give a demonstration of loyalty and affection second to none throughout the whole of the royal visit. Enthusiasm such as this deeply touched Her Majesty and her ex-service husband. Farewelled by General Richardson, the royal pair proceed on the next stage of their journey to visit the school children at the showground. While the ex-servicemen break up to carry on celebrations as only Australian ex-servicemen can. And at the showground, the word goes round. She's here. This is the hour for which thousands of children have been waiting for weeks. She's here. The Queen is here. The Queen of England. The Queen of Australia. Their Queen. Once again to the open Land Rover, from which she can unrestrictedly greet the children, the coming generation of Australians, the leaders and citizens of tomorrow. Remembering her own 2 children so far away, the Queen has a special place in her heart for all youngsters, and she shows it in her response to their greeting. The royal couple are presented to Mr. Drake, Area Inspector of Education, and Mrs. Drake. Whilst the speech in reply is being made at the showground, at the nearby steelworks, the final mothballs are swept off the royal carpet, and officials mentally rehearse their parts. The dull weather persists as the Queen, radiant as ever, arrives at the steelworks to be presented to Mr. and Mrs. Simons, Mr. and Mrs. Butler, and Mr. and Mrs. Norgard. Landmark of industrial Newcastle, the steelworks provided a fascinating experience for the Queen and the Duke. At regular intervals, presentations were made to sectional superintendents and more especially to many of the employees. The Newcastle visit draws to a close as the royal party are escorted to the BHP wharf, where a converted RAAF launch acts as the royal barge for the harbour crossing. Crowds man everything that floats to continue their royal welcome for as long as the Queen is in sight. Lifesavers, surfboats and water skis from nearby beaches all add to the carnival-like gathering on the harbour. The party alights at Stockton to be driven on the last stage of their journey through roads thronged with cheering crowds to the RAAF station at Williamtown, where the Royal Aircraft is in readiness. Airmen performed a most unusual duty in laying a special carpet for Her Majesty. At last, the never-to-be-forgotten Newcastle visit draws to a close. The Queen and the Duke are welcomed by the RAAF Station Commander, Group Captain Davis, and Mrs. Davis. And it's farewell to Newcastle after a brief few hours. Hours that will never be forgotten by any who have seen this very gracious lady, Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia. The Lord Mayor and Mr. R.N. Rogers, responsible for Newcastle's magnificent royal pageantry, officially opened the wonderful display of fireworks that commemorated Newcastle's royal visit, February 1954.